Hey everybody, it's your friend and your guy and your favorite Linux gaming buzzkill, Gardiner, the Linux Gamer. Nobody called me that, but that's what this video is going to be about today. So, if you haven't heard the news, Google has announced Stadia. And Stadia is an online streaming service that is going to basically rob you of your fundamental right to own the things you purchase. And I made a whole video of ranting about that like an old man on Friday. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. One of the things that people said about the previous video was that I didn't mention the fact that these games are going to be running on servers that have Debian on them, right? These are going to be Debian Linux-based servers. That means that companies like Ubisoft and id and all these others are going to be developing a Stadia version of the game, which means it's a Linux version of the game. And I've seen a lot of people who have said time and time again that this is how we get more native Linux games on the desktop. And I have to just be a bit of a contrarian here. See, the problem is I don't see Google Stadia running on Linux equating to more native Linux titles for the Linux desktop. I just don't see how one equals the other. Sure, they might be developing games for Linux, but they are going to be developing these games for a very stable, singular target. These are going to be Stadia servers. They're more or less going to be the same, and they're targeting the hardware and the software that Google provides. And I just don't see them spending the extra effort to support our community of Linux gamers. Memory card full. F you, dude. Sorry, my memory card was full, so I had to stop, and I lost my train of thought. Suffice it to say, I just don't see Linux games coming to the Linux desktop because of Stadia. Now, there are a couple reasons. The first is that, like I said, Google has a stable, singular target that more or less could be considered a console, right? These are cloud servers that are going to probably be approximately the same. I don't see a reason for them to be much different from each other. And these games are going to be running on that software, or on that hardware-software combination that Google provides. The other thing is, Stadia is probably going to have at least a little bit of proprietary code that in order for these games to be working on top of it. And I really believe that any game that's going to be running on the Stadia platform is going to be using these APIs that are probably just a little bit proprietary. Now, people are saying that Vulkan is going to be like the target, and that's cool. I mean, that's going to get more AAA developers involved with Vulkan, and that's great. And maybe it will result in one or two of these developers publishing their games for Linux desktops. But honestly, like a company like Bethesda or a company like Ubisoft or a company like Electronic Arts, they all are publishing almost exclusively within their closed platforms now, right? Bethesda's launcher, Electronic Arts' Origin, right? You have Epic with the Epic launcher. None of those are available on Linux right now. None of them. And so they literally don't have the deployment mechanism to get their game on the Linux desktop. Sure, they could publish on Steam, but they don't do that anymore. Like, Steam has alienated all of the AAA publishers because of their backwards stuff. I've ranted about this for decades. Go check it out. I have tons of videos about Steam alienating developers. But big publishers literally don't have the deployment mechanism to get games on the Linux desktop right now. They really don't. And I just can't see them doing so. The other thing about big publishers supporting Stadia and not Linux gaming is that Google invests like $1 billion or whatever into this platform, and publishers are so risk averse and so terrified of making any kind of unsure bet that the fact that they're going to develop a game for Stadia and not even bother with the Linux desktop is basically a gimme at this point. Like, I really just don't see them supporting Linux gaming because Stadia isn't Linux gaming. Stadia is Google's console, essentially. And it's almost a sure bet for them. I'm cautiously optimistic, and perhaps PC gamers who want to move away from Windows might use Stadia in some instances to be able to like switch over to Linux. But I just don't see it. Now, I do think that there's a bit of potential here for publishers to become more familiar with Linux, for developers to become more familiar with Linux, because Stadia is built on Debian and it has Vulkan as its primary graphics API. Those are good things. And I think that perhaps slowly in time, as developers become more comfortable with Linux and as Windows becomes an unviable platform for them, maybe we will see more games, more AAA games on Linux. That's my hope, because I am a hopeful person. But I can't see developers trying, or publishers okaying developing a game for Stadia and then trying to release it for the desktop Linux as well, because I think that there are technical hurdles and there are publisher licensing problems that are going to just get in the way of these games that, for all intents and purposes, should probably work just fine on Linux desktop, but just won't. I don't know. I'd like to know what you guys think. What do you think about Google Stadia? How do you think it will affect Linux gaming? Are you more of an optimist than I am? Let me know in the comments down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter at the Linux Gamer, or head over to the forums, forum.heavyelement.io, and let me know what you think there. If you want to hear what Raven and I think about this, we talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast this week, head over to offtopical.net. We talk about a lot of different things on the podcast, not just Google Stadia. But if you believe in the work that I do, you can support the show with a monthly contribution over on Patreon, or you can pick up one of these cool ass t-shirts at Teespring. There's a link down below. But no matter what you do, whether you hit that like button or share this video with your friends, don't forget to subscribe to see more from me, the Linux Gamer. And as always, thanks for watching.